Hello, thank you for joining us here at Mantel Farm for a video on beekeeping in our own apiary with myself, Josh, and Roger. We'll be taking a look to see how our bees are getting on since our last inspection on the 24th of February. Start down here first.
Poly first. Pollen going in.
Yeah, we've got some pollen going in.
I looked at them on Sunday, just from the outside, and the hive at the end, the wooden one, was really busy with lots of pollen and bees going in and out, and these other two were both quite quiet and with appeared to be very little pollen going in. So
be interesting to see.
It's probably just the number of bees rather than anything else. The fondant is going away slowly. It's really satisfying when you open up a thing and you find an empty bag.
Yes.
Because you know that something good's happening.
They're taking it.
Come on, you, get off there. Go on. Go on, move yourself. Right, there we go. Get the little darlings to go down a bit. We're huffing a bit of smoke in the top. Right, there we go. And we've got, on a preliminary look, two scenes of bees. That one and that one.
Okay.
Right, so here we go. Which isn't a lot.
No.
We've got an empty frame with just a little bit of stores in it. And as I go through, if I have the space, I will put the frames to the far side of the box, so the space that I'm working with is moving towards me all the time. Again, stores and a nice frame of drawn comb ready for brood expansion if it happens. When it happens.
Of course, Roger, it will.
When it happens. Got to be optimistic.
We have.
The one thing about beekeeping is that it's always going to be better tomorrow.
Quite.
And another frame with stores in it and sort of not quite fully drawn, but they have scope. Should they get there?
The weather's improving though, isn't it? Which is fantastic.
And there's plenty of forage for them if they bother to go and look for it.
Indeed.
Again, there's just stores the bees are clearing out gradually. Mostly it's crystallised, probably ivy, but they do get that shifted.
Mm.
I don't know why people say it's a problem, because my bees seem to manage it quite well. Just a bit of general housework here, just knocking a few bits of bridge comb off where they join the two frames together, because these are the places where bees are going to get crushed when you put the frames back in, because the silly girls won't move their feet. They've got their head into honey and they won't move their feet. And we come to the queen there. I did see her. Where is she? She's moved. There she is, right at the bottom.
Oh yes, there she is.
Unmarked, unclipped.
Yeah. Any sign of any eggs or anything?
I expect there are eggs in there, but I can't see them because the bees are standing in the way. Yeah, I can see eggs in the middle. And there's
fantastic.
A bee with deformed wings, so you know the varroa needs to be sorted.
Which one was it there, Roger? The deformed?
That one.
Oh yeah. Yeah, symptom of varroa.
It's actually it's a virus, but it's spread and exacerbated by varroa.
So if seen, you would assume it's safe to assume there's some varroa going.
Yeah, there is definitely varroa in here, and you know it would be as well to treat it now. Before things getting. If we can more or less wipe it out while there's hardly any bees there, therefore hardly any varroa, then it's going to take them longer to build up over the summer into a problem.
So that's not a disease passed from bee to bee, is it? It's just a.
It's also passed from bee to bee, but it's
mostly the varroa.
Become a varroa injected pathogen, I suppose it is. We've got sealed brood, a bit patchy. We've got a lot of eggs. There's some right up to the top there.
Yeah, we have got grubs in there as well, haven't we? Got some larvae.
Got larvae. I mean, it's kind of started off.
Similar thing on the other side.
Similar thing on the other side, yeah. Not. I mean, I looked at one of my nukes the other day, and it's a 6-frame nuke, and there were 3 and a bit frames of brood in it. Not complete frames, but you know, frames with this much on.
Yeah.
But there's a drone there already. But underneath the actual sealed brood, there's a huge area like this, way outside where the bees were, that was eggs. There's drone in
that's quite early, isn't it?
There. There's some more over there, and that drone that we saw over here, wherever it is, that one, is very small. So I would imagine that these two have both come from worker cells. I think the queen possibly is a drone layer in here, which is a shame really, but
so have to keep an eye on that one.
We may be able to do something about it, because it's that time.
She's quite a small queen as well, isn't she?
There's a nice new worker, just recently emerged.
Whereabouts is she now?
Just dived into a cell.
Oh yes, all fluffy, isn't she? Oh yeah.
So things are happening. Whoops, things are happening. Oh damn, bloody gloves.
So she is laying. We are getting some worker brood in there, but
there is also
high percentage of drone, considering
more drones than I'd expect, and it's in significantly. It's in worker cells. It's not in drone cells. At this time of year, it's possible to, and we probably have to do it, I'll see next week when we do the next inspection, just keep them going with frames of brood from other colonies, and then and that will give them the impetus to keep feeding and keep growing and replacing dying bees, but it will then keep the colony alive until we can put an actual queen cell in it in say a month's time, which will be kind of the middle of April, by which time there should be quite a lot of drones flying about, certainly by the end of April, and that way you don't have to close this colony off completely. You can just sort of keep it going, keep it jogging along the bottom, as it were, and then save it for a new queen to build up. That's one possibility, which, I mean, in a way it's kind of interesting to do it, rather than just kill them off and have all these frames to melt out, because you know, you haven't got anything else to do with them. Right, and here we have lots of new pollen being brought in. There's even a couple of leg loads there that haven't been hammered in yet.
Oh yes.
No eggs. Bees are working on the crystallised ivy honey. This, of course, is why they're all over the grass these mornings collecting water, and also diving in your drains and your other unsalubrious places, because the water in them has more flavour, presumably, I don't know.
Is it a vitamin thing? Nutrients, maybe, rather than distilled
nutrients. That,
yeah.
I mean, but you know, they're what give it its flavour. I mean, our domestic water at home is it's not bad. It's not awful, but it's quite sort of, I don't know, chemically. But if you boil it up in a kettle and allow it to cool, it becomes quite nice water to drink. There we have a frame with, you know, I would think probably in these darker areas it's bramble pollen from last year, which will sort of crystallise, but with big crystals, so it doesn't go really hard. There will be a lot of water, a lot of liquid in there, and in the centre and down the bottom there, this would be ivy honey, which came in later and has crystallised quite dry and hard.
You can see the difference, can't you, between where the ivy is underneath.
Yeah. But, and that side's all sealed honey as well. So they're certainly not hungry.
No. It's just the numbers, isn't it, and the queen, possibly.
Just the fact that I think the queen's kind of failing at the moment, and therefore there aren't that many bees in here. But again, we've got nice, well-drawn frames of practically all worker brood there. So you know, it's ready to go once we get a vigorous queen in there. And that again, nicely drawn frame, bit of stores in it, which will encourage them out to there to get it. So we've got 2 frames of brood on.
Yep.
We've got a queen that I suspect is becoming a drone layer.
And the reason for that is, just for those watching,
probably just insufficient mating for some reason. That's, you know, all you can really say. They because the unfertilised eggs turn into drones. This we know because we all read our books. And So if the queen has been laying workers that were obviously from fertilised eggs and start laying drones in worker cells, she hasn't realised yet that she's run out of sperm, but she's only producing males, which is not particularly conducive to colony build up at this time of year.
No.
What we want is frames and frames of workers.
We don't need the girls.
Well, yeah, I mean, as with humans, it's the girls that do all the work. And that one, because it was kind of sloppy. It's came off another hive. There's a big panel cut out of it like that. So if I turn it the other way up, it'll all fall down and squash the bees and drown them. So I'll put it that way up so that they can still get to it if they want to, and if they don't, then it can sit there for a week or two until they do want it, because they are quite rapidly going through the unsoggy one. She's there.
So can that be a problem with small colonies if they warm up or it starts to absorb moisture in the hive, the fondant that is, and then you've got it turned up the correct way or turned down? Can that drown the bees? Can that be an issue for smaller colonies?
I wouldn't have thought so.
No.
I mean, it's the fact that there are, well, even in this colony, which has very few bees to speak of, there are sufficient to keep the one that's dry, because they're always lapping up the wet bits. And the soggy one is actually drier now than it was 2 weeks ago when we put it on. So obviously the heat and ventilation of an occupied hive is keeping it drier, or making it drier rather, I would say. You know, it's not something that you can be absolutely sure about. And if it were to start raining again as it did last, August, and keep raining until 4 months hence, it might be a different story. Possibly, I don't know.
It's worth noting there, we did pop that insulation quilt on, didn't we? Was it a week ago or a couple of weeks? Just to give them a bit of warmth.
So that will have some effect. I think we'll see more of the effect on the other one, where there are more bees anyway, so it should be it's obviously a lot busier than just from the outside. Yeah, this is a bit of not exactly a lost cause, but a troubled child. It needs attention.
So it'll be quite interesting to follow this one, won't it? See.
Yeah, I mean, you learn more from your problems than you do from your successes, because your successes you just shrug your shoulders and say, oh, that was good.
Yes.
But your problems you actually have to give some thought to, and well, hopefully try and sort them out. I mean, many people just close it down and say, we've lost that one, to hell with it. You know, we'll use the stuff later in the year, or we'll melt the frames down, use the box later in the year. But I don't like killing bees, and when there is a chance that you can do something about it because of the season, I mean, if it had been 2 months ago, there'd be nothing you could do. No. But at this time of the year, there are things you can do.
So this is the cedar, isn't it? And these are taking in a fair bit of pollen, aren't they?
Yeah, these are a lot busier.
See that one there taking in some pollen.
At the moment, apart from all the usual flowers, there are the pussy willows out, providing both. Look at that!
Wow, look at that!
Both pollen and nectar from separate trees, because it seems to me to be what's it called? Is it monocarpal, where you get single-sexed trees?
I couldn't tell you.
Anyway, there are male trees that produce pollen, and there are female trees that produce mostly nectar, a very small amount of pollen on the catkins as well. And they're out in quite full force at the moment. We put these, that's the fondant on its own we put on.
That was in December that went in, didn't
a
it?
long time ago,
yeah.
And they've nearly finished that. The pollen containing candy was 2 weeks ago, and they've probably done just over half of that already, as well as carrying on with the
and still bringing in pollen and foraging on top.
Other one. So yeah, they're doing pretty good, this lot, and there's more bees on the fondant on this one than there were in the whole box of the other one, so there you go. Take the ink off carefully so it doesn't all fall apart in your hands. Oh, stop fucking. These are a little more unfriendly, defensive, or whatever you like to say, than the other one. And there's a lot more of them.
So we're going to give them a smoke.
Smoke a bit, and I can see 1, 2, 3 good seams of bees. 3.5. Oh no, more than that. Hang on.
About 5 or 6.
Right at the back.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 seams of bees. So there might well be 4 frames of brood in this one already, which is pretty good.
So we've already got 3 times the amount of seams in this one, haven't we?
Yep.
Which is pretty good.
Right, so starting with the dummy board. Now normally the dummy board would come out and, well, perhaps I'll do it that way anyway. Bit of mould on the dummy board.
Oh yeah.
Because it's got no traffic which helps with the ventilation. Right, so I'm going to do this properly, so I'm going to go through the frames and I'll put them back against this wall, and then the dummy board will go to the front, which is the accepted scheme of things. Right, so frame number 1 is stores, some of it crystallised, some of it still capped, both sides. Not all, not completely covered obviously, but just a couple of pounds in there.
So a fairly weighty frame then, even.
Yep, going to be alright for food if it starts getting nasty in the weather. Frame number 2 is quite similar. There's actually some, what looks like probably new nectar in the in that area there. So yeah, we're okay for eating stuff. I'm putting the hive tool down because this polynuke is crammed right against the side of this colony, so I can't actually hold the hive tool while picking frames up at the same time. And here we've got bees running about all over the place. I think they're possibly 30% whippet. We've got fresh pollen, we've got nectar there particularly.
Oh yes, look at that. So that soon would be caps, I guess. That's quite full there, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. They might not.
They might draw it out. They might use it before.
Because they're going to be expanding. They'll probably use that. And the next one I can see already has got almost a whole side of sealed brood on it. Normally the acceptable way is to keep your hive tool in your hand thus and manipulate the frames.
Right, so you've always got your tool there if you need.
But as I say, because we're crammed up against the next box, that is not going to happen here. Somebody's got crushed there. Right, so we've got larvae, we've got sealed brood, we've got eggs, got stores, no pollen. And we've got the same on that side.
No drone.
Can't see any drones.
So it's quite a difference, isn't it, between these two?
They're quite nervy, this lot.
Any reason for that, do you think?
I think it's just breeding. I don't know.
This weather's been very settled, hasn't it? So.
Yeah.
We've got some drone on this side, a couple of cells.
A sealed drone cell on this side as well.
I'll show people the drone, so they're the drone, aren't they? They're raised.
Yeah.
Let's see where they are.
But it looks as though they're actually drone cells in amongst the worker rather than
yes, so it's these
cells.
Those two there. So there's not an abundance of them,
That have been.
So they would probably they would probably be smaller drones as a result of being in the smaller cells.
Well, no. What I'm saying is that those look as though they were always drone cells. They've been
right.
out as drone cells. So they'll be
correct.
The right sort of drone. You know, big, bumbly.
So nice and tall as well, aren't they?
Hairy.
Yeah. Boggly-eyed.
Yeah. you stupid guys will move your feet, you won't get caught. We've got, well, all this is saying we've got new pollen over this side.
Yes. We must have eggs in that middle part then, or are they?
There's larvae in the middle,
Larvae.
where they've obviously relayed. I've got this at the wrong angle for the sun to shine into the cells, so I can't actually see where there's eggs in the bottom. Yeah, there's eggs on that side, certainly. Up near the top and also at the bottom.
I certainly see the larvae
Yeah.
in there.
They look healthy, they're the right colour, sort of pearly white and glistening, and nicely curled in the cells.
And haven't seen any with deformed wings so far.
I'm putting my thumb on the end of the frame lugs when I lever them out, because they stuck them down with propolis and they actually make quite a discernible crack when you first lever them up, and that upsets the bees and they've got a bit nervy about it. So if I can prevent that crack, then they don't feel that sharp vibration, and they remain calmer. That is all pollen, I think.
A little bit of nectar in there, maybe.
There's nectar in there. I can't see any eggs. We haven't seen the queen, but with the bees jiggling about so much, I'm not really surprised about that. And also, if you've got jiggly bees, then the queen will very often run in front of your inspection and
so just chasing her tail.
wind up being on the last frame that you pull out, or even on the side of the box near the entrance. It's one of the reasons why the supposedly great British bee is such a pain to commercial beekeepers.
So generally more.
Because you just can't find the queen. They all tend to run out of the front of the hive and hang under the floor, and the queen included. Whereas with more sensible strains of bee, the queen just carries on with what she's doing, as did that one over there in the previous colony, and you can actually more or less guarantee to find her, because she's the big one that's laying eggs, whereas in this one there's no way of seeing them because they're just all running about and jiggling and nervy. And
so it's just a predisposition through mating and
it's just it's a genetic thing. This is, just my personal experience. People who claim to have the Great British Bee will obviously disagree with me and say they're all wonderful.
so on that frame there, they'd just put in some of the icing sugar, I guess, or fondant that we'd put on top.
Just a bit of this and that. It's not even a completely drawn frame, that one, so I'll probably put it in hoping it will get drawn. Right, so I'll probably be putting at least one of these towards the back to put the brood more in the centre of the box. That's a nicely evenly drawn frame of from last season. I'd say, what a state of it. It's obviously had larvae in more or less solidly last year.
It's just very dark.
But it's that sort of rich brown. So, I mean, it's not black enough to desperately want to be changed out. But I would say that in an ideal world, it's probably as well to change all the frames every year. It's probably never going to happen, even in my own colonies, because you just don't have the time and thingy to do it. But I think that would be the ideal, and certainly don't keep them more than 2 years as brood frames, because, well, I mean, that one, for instance, you can actually see where they've been brooding that, because the outside is light and relatively clean. The middle is quite brown, and now it's full of pickled pollen, which has been stored over the winter with honey over the top to preserve it. Which is why it's all that orange colour with.
So people looking at that, because it's got that shiny surface, some people might probably look at that and think, is that set honey or nectar? But that's pollen, isn't it?
Yeah. And then there's that sort of surface mould on the bottom, which, if the frame stays in and the bees decide to use it for anything, they'll clean that off really well. It's quite astounding how well they can clear up a mess like, what to us is a nasty mouldy mess like that. So now I've got to decide which one of these I'm going to put to the back to bring the brood more to the centre of the box again. It's not going to be that one, because it's got holes in it and it's just basically pretty horrible. Hang on. I'm just going to scrape the propolis and dead bees off this bit. If you have the hive tool at more or less right angles to the wood, then you don't pick up the grain of the wood, which will split horribly if it happens. So, but if you do it like that, then it cleans it off really well. I mean, that's a bit down to the wood more or less, and that one. And it does a really fine job of doing it, and without doing any actual damage to the woodwork at all. Right, so we put the dummy board back in. Again, give it a bit of a scrape first. I know I'm dropping bits of old wax in the apiary. This will cause heart attacks in the proper beekeepers. But
so having the dummy board at the front, a lot of people looking and seeing that, they would probably think, oh, you've got to keep it at the back. But does it really make a lot? Does it matter where you put it? You're saying earlier about it being acceptable to have it at the front. Is that?
Well, the whole point of having a dummy board is that when you do an inspection, you take the dummy board out first, and it gives you space to handle the other frames. That's, to my mind, that's the only reason for having a dummy board in a full-size colony. Personally, I'd rather have another frame of brood in there, but you know, that's not happening here because it's not my colony. And you know, because it's a training apiary, we have to show people the ways to do things properly. And the proper way is that you wind up at the end of your inspection with a space at one side of the box or the other, and you put the dummy board into that, and you ram all the frames up against it.
So in theory, so each time you're alternating as such.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that way I mean, now because it's this time of year and because of what I want to do, which is move an empty frame from the entrance side over there to the back over here, because the brood is in these 3 frames here, and I want it more central. I mean, the bees don't care. It's just a purely
management
personal
point of view.
management thing.
Yeah.
You know, it will be slightly different on this occasion because I will have to move all the frames over, but I'll try and do it all at once rather than do it in dribs and drabs, because if you do it in dribs and drabs, as soon as there's a gap there, bees will run into the gap, because it's a fresh surface for them. And then when you push them together, those little darlings get crushed. So yeah, it's not a good idea, if you can avoid it, to keep moving, pushing, you know, 2 or 3 frames across up against other frames, because you know, every time you do it, there's a risk that you're squashing bees. Right, so I'm going to pick out a fairly decent frame. That one I think was pretty good. Yeah, it's got a bit of stores in that side, but that side is clean and even. Almost, yeah, the bees will have to polish up the cells before the queen lays in them, but that's almost ready to be used by the queen. So I shall put that one in, not right at the outside, but I'll put it one in from the back. Push that across a little way first. Move that over there, so that I'm hopefully not going to squash any of the darlings. Push it over like that. Pop that in there, that way around to the stores, the stores and bits and bobs on the outside, and then when they get to it, it's ready and waiting. So we do that, and then we check the smoker. And we have a quick look down those 2 seams there, and at this time of year, because there aren't many bees in there, relatively speaking, there's no activity in those gaps, so I just push them together, push the dummy board against the front frame lugs, put my spectacles back on probably in a minute, and just do it like that. Now when you're levering, you want them as tight as you can get them without breaking anything, so you use, on this side you put the high tool in that way and you lever it this way, and then you turn it round because the solid part of the thing is over here, and lever it back, and then you just check that it hasn't all sort of wandered off on its own, because sometimes you press one end and the other end twangs back again, so you know, just keep an eye on that. And there we are, we've done it. They sort of appear to be doing pretty good.
Yeah.
I've seen more numerous colonies at this time of the year. Last week in my apiary. I've also seen a lot of dead colonies in my apiary last week. So you know,
it's been a very bizarre winter for them. I think
been a difficult winter for the bees. I think. I'm not really sure, but it does appear to me that they've kind of had troubles with basically just running out of bees, and I think maybe because the weather was so mild all the way through until, I can't actually remember, but it was quite
into December, wasn't it? It was
February,
quite
before we had a really cold spell. So a lot of them were still flying, but they weren't bringing anything back, so the queen wasn't getting fed much. So they weren't laying. Well, the queen wasn't laying, so the bees were wearing themselves out and not being replaced. And I think that's been a problem this year because you know, several of my colonies have died out, and when I opened them up, there've been a handful, you know, a couple of 2 handfuls of bees in there dead, and the queen there looking perfectly sound but dead.
Yeah.
And that's
all provisioned as well.
And provisioned and everything, but just, you know, as though, you know, there's been something that they just couldn't handle, and I think it was basically I've done that wrong, haven't I? That wants to go.
Oh yeah, that way.
That way. And that wants to go that way. I want to get these bees out right now. He's squashing them again. Come on, girls, down you go. Heads down for a full house. And to put it that way around so they have less far to go to get the pollen substitute or whatever it is to the brood.
That's a good point, because they were taking it from the other end, weren't they?
Put that one on there, that way around. Put the cover board on. Way round. I can't juggle in these leather gloves. Line it all up. Get out the insulation and pop it on the top. Puts on the roof.
Yep.
Goes.
And there we are.
And there we are.